If you were bitten by a venomous snake, would you ignore it? What if you go to the doctor and you are diagnosed with cancer? Would you simply shrug it off? If you are thirsty and ignore, would the thirst go away? Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the Fourth Branch Project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. We are talking today about similarities between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump. We began this morning with doing a recap of where we are at in the discussion. Now, for those who are not aware or who have not seen the program before, the purpose of the Fourth Branch is to work towards achieving a more perfect union. We have identified a few obstacles which prevent that from happening. And one of such obstacles is ignorance. And we have, with the discussion of the similarities between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump, we have found and identified that it is indeed one of the major obstacles which seems to be in the way of achieving a more perfect union. Now, a few people from who are obviously in Donald Trump camp suggest that this discussion is useless, moot, ridiculous, because, quote unquote, Donald Trump is not Adolf Hitler. The United States is not Germany. And Donald Trump did not kill 6 million Jews. And Donald Trump is not a dictator. Now, time and again, I found out that a number of individuals who find out that suggest that this program is ridiculous at best seems to strengthen my argument as to we need to remove ignorance from the equation in order to get to a more perfect union. Now, why discussing the similarities between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump? George Santayana said that those who cannot remember the past are condemned to relive it. And in a twist, I actually said those who ignore the past will be forced to relive it. History is here for a reason. History leaves us a number of opportunities to understand events when they're happening and what they may lead to. So we know that if we put our hands on fire, we're going to be burned, not by some sheer accident. It's because there were already information available to us to let us know that do not do that because we would be burned if we put our hands on fire. Of course, we can always ignore that and try it and find out that's indeed, it's true that by putting our hands on the fire, we will be burned. But why would you want to try to do something that's not only would hurt you, but something that's already determined would hurt you, and information is left behind for you to know that is going to be the case? Now, there is only one species on the face of this planet who seem to learn, who seem to have a brain capable of rationalizing, capable of thought, capable of logic, and that's the human species. Now, the minute that an individual stops using that ability, he or she is no longer, from that perspective, does no longer belong to the human species, at least whether it's temporarily, but nevertheless. Because the only thing which differentiates us, human, from all other animal species is the ability to think, the ability to rationalize, the ability to deduce, and the ability to learn from mistakes, whether it's ours or other people, but we learn from it. So we know that, again, with the fire example, that if we put our hands on the fire, we would be burned. So not only we know that, but we pass that to future generations so that they don't have to go through that. That's the purpose of history. So we debating similarities between Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler for the very purpose of understanding how Germany get to that point, how the world get to that point, so we can learn from it and we try to avoid going through the same path. Now, for those who think or who argue the fact that Donald Trump is not a dictator, Donald Trump, this is not Germany, and there is no way that Donald Trump could be compared to Adolf Hitler. Now, just a recap of what we talked about earlier. Number one, we mentioned that Adolf Hitler did not start out as a dictator. We even provide the example of Benito Mussolini, who was the prime minister of Italy in 1922. He was elected prime minister of Italy in 1922. Just like Adolf Hitler, Mr. Mussolini also was had a certain popularity. That's why he was elected prime minister. Now, Adolf Hitler in Germany, contrary to popular belief, because based on my conversation with a number of Trump supporters, they seem to think that the reason that Donald Trump can't ever be another Adolf Hitler, it's because Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. Now, the part of what missing is information from those same individuals who do not know and understand that likewise Adolf Hitler was legitimately, officially appointed Chancellor of Germany. So, contrary to popular belief, Adolf Hitler did not grab power, did not overthrow government in Germany to become Chancellor of Germany. And the information that I provided earlier clearly show that Adolf Hitler did everything by the book, everything according to the Constitution of Germany at that time, known as the Weimar Republic. So if you look at how it started, you would say that in all fairness, before Adolf Hitler became the monster that today most people think that's the way he started as, if you leave behind the time that he was being transformed as a monster, everything that Adolf Hitler did was done according to the Constitution of the Weimar Republic, parentheses, Germany. So the idea that it's impossible for somebody else, in this case we're referring to Donald Trump, to become another Adolf Hitler, is not so far-fetched because of the fact, as I already pointed out in several different episodes of this documentary, we today debating episode A, part B, that just a side note, that if you have not seen any of the previous episodes, you can find them on the People Branch YouTube channel. All past episodes of this documentary, including other topics that we already discussed, all of them are available on the People Branch YouTube channel. Now, back to Adolf Hitler. The reason it is important to know and understand history, it's to be able to understand the events that are evolving right under our eyes, and be careful enough so that we don't find ourselves in the same predicament the world was in 1933. Again, I will emphasize this as much and as often as possible so that I can get the point across that Adolf Hitler was a legitimate and official Chancellor appointed of the government, Chancellor of Germany, January 30th, 1933. So now, for those who may have just a snippet of history and who say that Adolf Hitler tried to overthrow the German government, that part is absolutely true. In 1923, after Adolf Hitler came from, after World War I ended, and Adolf Hitler was decorated as for his service in the armed forces, a few years later, 4 years later, he tried to overthrow the German government. Now, the effort was unsuccessful. He was arrested. He was thrown in jail. Now, that was the only time that Adolf Hitler tried to do that, and he failed. At that time, Adolf Hitler was about 1923, was about 33 years old. 1923. Yes, he was about around 33 years old. He was born in 1889. Now, beyond that, and keep in mind, when Adolf Hitler was trying to overthrow the government, he was simply a member of the German Workers' Party. He didn't have any title in the government. He was just a member of a party which would later become the Nazi Party. So there was really no function, no official title for him. And in fact, the Nazi Party was what you would consider a French party. There were not many people, many members of that party who were part of the government, of the German government. So they were pretty much just like the Freedom Caucus here in the United States, actually a little bit less important than that, because today the Freedom Caucus of the Republican Party has quite a few members that are promoting their extreme agenda. Now, the Nazi Party didn't enjoy such privilege at that time. So, when Adolf Hitler, if you want to find out how Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, I again refer you to the previous episode of this documentary, Similarities Between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump. All of them are posted in the People Branch YouTube channel. Now, after Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, appointed officially, legitimately, by then President Paul von Hindenburg, now Adolf Hitler worked according to the Constitution of the Weimar Republic. Again, that's another name for Germany at that time. Now, the first thing that happened, the first thing that Adolf Hitler tried to do legitimately, and I want to keep emphasizing that so that you understand that the fact that someone has a popular support does not necessarily translate to this person is actually good for the country, is actually good for the world. Now, before Adolf Hitler became Chancellor of Germany, then President Paul von Hindenburg did not want that to happen, because not only did he see maybe as a war strategist, as a very brilliant war strategist, he could foresee what Adolf Hitler was about. Regardless, he was influenced by the former Chancellor of Germany by the name of Franz von Papen, who happened to have been previously Paul von Hindenburg Chancellor, and who was forced out, but still remains a close friend to the president. So he exerted a little bit of influence on then President Paul von Hindenburg, who was pretty much bedridden, to let Adolf Hitler fulfill his agenda, his policies for him. Now, again, Adolf Hitler, once established as Chancellor of Germany, he pushed the Enabling Act of 1933, which I explained earlier. In a sense, what that act does, it's saying that it asks the Reichstag and the Reichsrat, the equivalent of the Congress and the Senate here in the United States, that particular act ask those two bodies of the German government to provide the German cabinet the authority to make laws for a period of 4 years without having to go to the Reichstag and the Reichsrat, which means the German cabinet could wake up any day and pass any law and They don't have to worry about, just like here in the United States, it's the comparison would be that Donald Trump would go to Congress, to the Senate, and say, I want you to give me full power so that I can do whatever I want for a period of 4 years without having to give any account to anybody. That's pretty much the same idea that he could say, just like you see he tried to do with the immigrant. He could say, take all of them, put them in jail. And in that particular case, if that kind of power was to be given to Donald Trump, nobody in the government could come and ask him to reverse course. Not the court, not anybody could do that, because he would have gotten that power from Congress and the Senate. And remember, even the court today that force him to reverse course is because there are laws, and those laws, and remember who makes laws in this country, it's Congress and the Senate. Those are the two bodies of the government known under the branch, the legislative branch. Now, if those two bodies of the government decide that the President of the United States have plenary power, then nobody can do anything about that. Now, picture that. Adolf Hitler went through the proper channel and have the Enabling Act of 1933 gone through the Reichstag, passed, gone through the Reichsrat, passed, and now the only thing that was missing was the president's signature, Paul von Hindenburg. Now, I'm going to speculate a little bit here because history did not report that the president had any kind of argument and just sign off on it. Now, if you want to extrapolate as to the way that Paul von Hindenburg thought of Adolf Hitler, I can speculate that he did not sign off on that voluntarily. And the reason I say that is because, first of all, he did not even want to name Adolf Hitler Chancellor of Germany because he had a great doubt about Adolf Hitler. He had doubt about his agenda, he had doubt about his mindset, and in fact, he was even afraid that Adolf Hitler had very nefarious mindset towards Germany. So I speculate, again, it's purely speculation here, that it wasn't voluntarily that Paul von Hindenburg signed off on that, because the Enabling Act of 1933 was not a small thing. It gave the German cabinet full power to do anything that the cabinet wish to do without anybody come and question what they were doing. Whatever they did. Remember the famous expression by Donald Trump, I can stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot someone, I would not lose any voter. Well, the Enabling Act of 1933 provided that kind of shield to the German cabinet. They could do anything they want. They could execute a German citizen in the middle of the street, and there is nothing anybody could do about that for the period of 4 years that Enabling Act was in effect. But they provided that kind of power to the German cabinet, but in a sense, they actually provided that kind of power to Adolf Hitler. But look at it from a very logical perspective. Adolf Hitler did all that through the proper channel. According to the Constitution of the Weimar Republic, he put that in front, just like here in the United States. If the president wants something to be done, he sent it to Congress, which would vote on it and decide to pass it or to reject it, right? Now, same idea, that Adolf Hitler could have sent that to Reichstag and Reichsrat. They could have just simply rejected it. So he went through the proper channel. So he did not do anything different from what is done here in the United States, which is a democratic system. So he abode by the principle of the Weimar Republic, of the Constitution of the Weimar Republic. So for anybody who think that Adolf Hitler was just a dictator because of what we later learned about him, and that's the reason that a number of people now are arguing the case that Donald Trump cannot possibly become Adolf Hitler, then they're gravely mistaken, because everything that was being done by Adolf Hitler was being done according to the Constitution of the Weimar Republic. Now, the Enabling Act of 1933 passed in March 23rd, 1933. That's just 2 months after Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. He was moving extremely fast in consolidating power. But the way that he managed to do that, again, it could be, you could consider that as being really sneaky. You could consider that, you could call it politics. Now, whatever label you put on it, the fact remains that he went through the proper channel. Now, what Adolf Hitler did, and which is very similar to what Donald Trump is currently doing right here in the United States, is there is an act that was passed called actually a decree that was passed that was called the Reichstag Fire Decree. Now, the Reichstag Fire Decree, remember I mentioned that the Reichstag is the equivalent of of Congress in the United States. Now, the Reichstag Fire Decree was enacted because the building where members of the Reichstag assembled, just like here in the United States, in Washington, and the House, Congress gathered every day to do the government business. Same idea, that the Reichstag, they had their building where they gather every day to do the government business, the German government business. Now, it so happened that when the idea was being floated around about the Enabling Act of 1933, that a small group of Reichstag members did not agree to go along with it. Really understandably so, because here in the United States, same idea, whenever something comes to on the floor of the House or the Senate, it's not everybody that's going to vote for it. Now, more often than not, you have kind of a partisan type of vote. If it's something that Republican introduce, more often than not, most Republican will vote for it, and Democrat will vote against it, and vice versa. Now, in Germany, however, there were so many political parties, it was impossible to have anything done without having really a compromise from all the parties that comprised the Reichstag. Now, Hitler knew that. The Nazi party, that had a plurality of vote, but did not have the majority in the Reichstag or the Reichsrat. So what Adolf Hitler did is when the idea of passing the Enabling Act of 1933 was being floated around. Now, Reichstag members look at that as, well, we're not going to do that. We're not going to provide that kind of power to a branch of government, at which point for 4 years we cannot say anything about anything they do. Now, those members were pretty smart, because whether it was Adolf Hitler or anybody else, the minute that you sign, the president sign off on that, automatically the German cabinet there is no limit to what they could do. No limit whatsoever. Because whatever they did during that period of time, they were provided that kind of power. Nobody could say anything because they had plenary power for a period of time. According to the document, that kind of power was given to the German cabinet for 4 years and could be renewed after 4 years by the Reichstag and the Reichsrat. Now, that is assuming if they wanted to do that, which means, in a sense, if you think about it, that if you give a certain amount of power to a cabinet of a particular government and they abuse that, then when the time comes to have that kind of power renewed, more often than not, more likely than not, you're not going to renew that. But Hitler had a different idea. So those members of the Reichstag who did not really agree with the idea, he had to get rid of them somehow. Now, what ended up happening, the building where the Reichstag member gathered every day to discuss the German government business was set on fire. Now, for no reason whatsoever, and I'm going to speculate here again because history never reveal, of course, history suspicious as to who might have been behind it, but it was never concluded after many investigations as to who was behind that. But it is fair, it is a very good educated guess to say that maybe, just maybe, members of the Nazi party, underground members, French element, of course the Nazi party was already a very extreme party, but it is a fair guess to think that they were the one who actually set that building on fire for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, it's because at first they wanted Hitler to overthrow the government. Hitler became the leader of the Nazi party, and he had a popularity that's beyond precedent. Nobody has ever had such popularity. We're not talking about popularity among the Nazi members. That's not what we're talking about. Just like here, when we're talking about Donald Trump has a popularity among the Republicans. According to the latest survey, even after the Finland debacle, he still enjoy a whooping 88% of support from the Republican. And that only from the Republican. But in the case of Adolf Hitler, contrary to popular belief, who think of Adolf Hitler as someone who was simply going around putting gun on people's head because, of course, he became a dictator. But beginning in the process, Adolf Hitler had popularity never, ever before seen. So the idea that he was just a dictator and Trump cannot be, that idea can be thrown out of the window easily. Because if you compare Adolf Hitler to Donald Trump doesn't have any popularity. He's only popular among Republicans and only popular among those who cannot clearly see that he doesn't have the interest of the United States. Now, to be fair, and not to condone what Adolf Hitler was did later on, but Adolf Hitler was a true nationalist. What that means really, he had Germany, the interest of Germany. He wasn't filling his pocket. Now, that's one thing that we know for certain, that contrary to what we see here in the United States, Adolf Hitler was mostly concerned about the national pride, German pride. That's what he was most concerned about. Now, this is not to condone what he had become later, but to make the comparison between those two men, that there is some similarities but there are some similarities, but there are also some differences as well. So out of nowhere, Adolf Hitler accused members of the Reichstag for setting the building on fire. Out of nowhere. Nobody knows where he got that idea. Nobody knows why he thought so. But he blurted out that certain members of the Reichstag set the building on fire. Now, the idea itself was ridiculous, because when you think about it, this is the place where they gather to discuss government building, government business. This is the place they gathered every day to discuss the German government affairs. Now, they have no reason whatsoever as member of that body to set their own building on fire. But the Nazi party did. They had a reason to do that because they needed a leverage. Adolf Hitler tried to have the Enabling Act of 1933 pass, but members of the Reichstag, or some members of the Reichstag, were against it. Now, remember, the Enabling Act of 1933 would give unlimited, unfettered power to the German cabinet, who happened to be led by Adolf Hitler. Now, up to that point, you can call it whatever you so like, but for all purpose of history, for all purpose of argument, for even using the logic of the Weimar Constitution, Adolf Hitler went and did things by the book. Granted, accusing members of the Reichstag to have set the building on fire has nothing to do with what we're talking about in terms of the process that he tried to go to put through to get the Enabling Act passed. Now, what we have concluded from that, from saying that members of the Reichstag set the building on fire, is very similar to what Donald Trump has done to members who have gone against what he has in mind. For instance, John McCain has been booed many times because Donald Trump makes it a point to go after John McCain. So when you look at Adolf Hitler and you look at Donald Trump, the way that those two men think, it's pretty similar, because they use whatever tool that they have, however disgusting that tool is, in order to fulfill their agenda. Donald Trump accused the Democrats of not loving the country. Now, you can shrug it off, and what even sadder is to have a bunch of people, a crowd of people sitting there as American cheering someone who is saying those kind of things and think it's fun, it's funny, I'm having fun, without seeing the danger behind supporting someone who is doing something like that. That's exactly the same thing that was happening in Germany at that time. And you think history cannot repeat itself? It's actually being repeated right under our eyes, that Donald Trump is using the same tool. We're not there yet in terms of killing 6 million Jews, but we are looking at it We are looking at the same things that happened in 1933 under Adolf Hitler. We are actually witnessing the same thing happening right here in the United States of America. Now, to think that's not possible because Adolf Hitler killed 6 million Jews? Adolf Hitler didn't kill 6 million Jews at the period of time that we're currently discussing. He didn't kill 6 million Jews then. He was working his way towards consolidating power. And what do you think is currently happening in the Trump administration? When someone who is trying to consolidate power is putting in place measure to do that, the first thing that they do is cut all channel of communication to anybody who is not in their circle or who they do not consider part of their circle. That's the first thing that they do. Adolf Hitler did exactly that. Those people in the Reichstag, those members of the Reichstag who did not agree with Adolf Hitler, who would not go along with Adolf Hitler, were accused by Adolf Hitler himself, not some other members of the Nazi Party, which I'm certain that they too were echoing the same thing that Adolf Hitler was saying. But Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany, second in command, accused without any proof that member of the Reichstag set the building on fire. Donald Trump, President of the United States, accused the Democrats of not loving the country. And he had done, in fact, we lost count how many things Donald Trump has accused other members, not only members of the Democrat Party, but members of his own party whenever they take a position against him. We're looking at the same playbook, Donald Trump and Adolf Hitler. So the idea that Donald Trump cannot be Adolf Hitler can be thrown out of the window without flinching. Because up to this point, and keep in mind, we are still going through the process of showing you the path that Adolf Hitler took to become what he became. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen in 1 year. It was a gradual process. And one of the most important tools used by most dictators, I should say by all dictators, by all authoritarian, the first and the most powerful tool that they use is to sow doubt and to accuse people. And they don't care, they do not care what kind of impact accusing someone has. They do not care that accusing anyone of something so nefarious, so disgusting as saying, for instance, that members of a certain party does not love the country. Now, the idea is to simply sow doubt in the heart of people. Because every time you see something happen and you say, could it be? Could it be? That's exactly the same thing that happened in Germany. Adolf Hitler sowed doubt. It had popular support across the country, not just a small group, not just the Nazi Party, but people across the country adore Adolf Hitler. Now he is that same guy accusing members of the Reichstag of setting the building on fire. It did not have to give any proof. The minute he said it and repeated it, now I'm gonna quote you a very famous line used by Adolf Hitler among the close members, his close circle of advisors, if you like. And you're gonna recognize it quickly without me saying anything to you. And this is a quote from Adolf Hitler. If you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed. And he's the second part of the quote that he always makes certain, he always advise his advisor to make sure that this is used over and over and over until it becomes second nature. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Now the whole quote is, if you tell a big enough lie and tell it frequently enough, it will be believed. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. Does that ring any bell to you? Does that sound to you somebody that we know of living right now in our midst? The President of the United States? Does that sound anything different to you between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump when it comes to that? Both of them subscribe to the exact same principle. Lie, lie, lie every time, lie continuously, keep lying until people believe what you're saying. That was Adolf Hitler in 1933. And what do you see happening now? Now, don't come and tell me Donald Trump cannot become Adolf Hitler, because they both subscribe to the same idea, to the same tool, to the same approach. We are simply at the beginning of Adolf Hitler chancellorship in Germany. So stay with me for just a second. I'm going to go into a short commercial. We'll come back to talk about what happened with Adolf Hitler spreading the lie, starting with his cabinet. Remember, he was Chancellor of Germany. He started there, accused member of the Reichstag of setting the building on fire. Why are we talking about that? It's because there was a decree called the Reichstag Fire Decree that was enacted, that was passed because of a fire that was set in the building where the Reichstag member used to gather to discuss the affairs of government. Now, when the building was set on fire, Adolf Hitler, Chancellor of Germany, without any proof to show you how important that particular sentence is, when I say without any proof, that even as of date, it's still unclear as to who did set the building on fire. So just to give you an idea, 80 years later, it's still not clear. Of course, there is suspicion, but it's still not clear as to who set the building on fire. But the Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler, did not have any qualm saying that Reichstag members set the building on fire, accused them without any proof. Do we know anybody like that who accuse people without proof? Does that sound anything that we witnessing in our lives today? Something that we're living every day? hold your horse for a moment. We'll go into a commercial break and we'll be right back to continue our conversation on similarities between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump. You are watching the Fourth Branch Project, the first program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. The Fourth Branch has for goal to achieve a more perfect union. Stay with me. I'll be right back.
Now, baby, you're casting your spell on me. Boogum, now, baby, you're casting your spell on me. I say, boogum, now, baby, you're casting your spell on me. My baby's casting spells on me.
The performance in Helsinki was enough to drop Donald Trump's support to zero, because anybody who is a patriot, an American patriot, should not have any reason whatsoever to still stand behind the president, the first person whose primary job is to elevate the country, but did just the opposite. Nobody should have been behind that person. And yet we have Republicans who still defending, arguing their support for Donald Trump. Seriously? Really? What the hell? Join me here on the Fourth Branch at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. every Saturday. You are on the Fourth Branch program, and we are debating similarities between Adolf Hitler and Donald Trump. We are currently on episode 8, part B of the discussion. Now, if you are interested in the previous episode that we have already discussed, you can find them on the People Branch YouTube channel. That's People Branch YouTube channel. That's where all discussion about this particular topic and all other topics that we have already approached and discussed are in the People Branch YouTube channel. I also would like to remind you that we have this program every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. where we discuss various topics geared mostly towards educating in order to be able to achieve a more perfect union. As we pointed out many times, and we will continue to do so, the Fourth Branch Project is apolitical. It is not a Democrat program. It's not a Republican program. In other words, we will discuss topics that will please one group or the other because of the topic. However, the main objective, the main goal of the program is to be able to provide a way to understand events, whether it's events of the day or history, in order to remove the obstacles of ignorance to achieve a more perfect union. You are watching the Fourth Branch Project, and we meet again every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. I thank you very much for watching. I will see you next Saturday at 10:30 a.m. If you have any comments, suggestion, criticism, or a way to improve what we're doing now, please do not hesitate to contact us. The Fourth Branch Project will not go anywhere until we achieve a more perfect union. Thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Have a great evening and a good rest of the week. I am MD, and thank you.